Good morning, everyone. Today we are going to learn about Vedic text, Vedic culture, and what is about the Vedic ages. Vedic age. The first phase of urbanization in India came to end with decline of Indus Valley civilization. So the first phase of urbanization when came to end when the Indus civilization was declined. A new era called Vedic age began with the arrival of Aryans. So, new era is new stage started, which was called Vedic age. When it began when the Aryans started arriving India. Vedic age. It's a period in the history of India between 1500 BC to 600 BCE. It gets its name from four Vedas. So, the Vedic age starts from 1500 BC to 600 BCE, and it gets its name for four Vedas. So it gets its name from four Vedas. So that is why it is called Vedic age. Who were the Aryans? The Aryans were the Indo-Aryan language speaking semi-nomadic pastoralist. They came from Central Asia in several ways of migration through Khyber Pass of Hindu Kush mountain. So the Aryans were Indo-Aryan language. They the Aryans used to speak Indo-Aryan languages, and they were pastoralists. They came through Khyber Pass of Hindu Kush mountains. The cattle raiding main occupation. What was their main occupation? They used to rear the cattle. They used to rear the cattle, and they practice burn agriculture. And what is burn agriculture? Let me explain. The forest area, the forest which was cleared and burned, and on that they used they make it they make their agriculture there. After some year or after years, they take another piece of forest land, they cut the trees, they burn there, and they make the farming, and again years and years it goes off. So slash and burn agriculture, it's a farming method that involves clearing the land by cutting and burning all the trees and plants on it. So it's clear that clearing the land by cutting and burning all the plants, cultivation is done there for a short time, then abandoned because it's if because due to of less soil nutrients, they change, the fertility changes. Now it comes to extent of Vedic culture. Early Vedic period we see here. Here we see that it's early Vedic period. In later Vedic period started in Ganga, Doab and Yamuna region. Geographical region range, it's northern India. Period, it was Iron Age period. The time was 1500 BC to 600 BC. Sources Vedic literature. Nature of civilization was rural. Aryans and their homes in India. Aryans of Rigvedic period was semi-nomadic. Semi-nomadic here mentioned means they used to rear cattle, they used to do agriculture. Cattle was the main source. In Rigvedic times, the Aryans' homeland was Punjab, which was at the same time called Saptasindhva. The Aryans' homeland, the Aryans' homeland was Punjab, and it was called Punjab was called Sapsindhva because it had seven rivers in it. Around 1000 BC, Aryans in India moved eastward and settled in Indo-Gangetic plain. After thousand after Punjab, they moved to eastward in the Indo-Gangetic in the Yamuna plain, and they settled there. Here they used iron axes and ploughs became widespread. The four Vedas here is Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, Atharva Veda. Vedic culture. Vedic literature can be classified into two broad categories. Shrutis, Shrutis comprise four Vedas. The first one is the Brahmanas, the Aryankas, the Upanishads. They are considered sacred, eternal, and unquestionable truth. Here we have Shrutis. In Shrutis we have four Vedas. Shruti comprise four Vedas. Okay, in Vedic literature we have Shruti, and Shruti comprise in the Vedas. So in the Shrutis we have in the Vedas we have Brahmanas, Aryankas, Upanishads. These are called sacred. We cannot question because these are sacred. These are like these are not questioned. These are eternal. Eternal. They can't be questioned. They are sacred means they are religious, that they can't be questioned. They can't just, it's there. we are hearing from our ancestors and we are doing. It's like a culture, it's like a tradition, we are following it. Shruti means listening or unwritten. Here Shruti is a Hindi word which means listening or unwritten. Here it it is it is it is unwritten means it's not written. It is transported from generation to generation through verbal one that are transmitted orally through generation. Here it's mentioned that Shruti means listening. Smritis, a body of text containing teachings on religion such as itihasas, Puranas, Tantras, Agamas. So here Smritis are that which has teachings of itihasas, Puranas, Tantras, Agamas. Smritis are not eternal. They are constantly revised. Smriti means definite and written literature. Smriti here it's definite and it is written in a book form or some other in a written form like in Vedic text we have Shruti. Shrutis we have four Vedas, we have Brahmanas, Aryankas, Upanishads. Smritis we have Itihasas, Puranas, Ramayana. In Itihasa we have Ramayana, Mahabharata. Puranas we have Shiva Purana, Vishnu Purana. Sutras we have Dharma Sutra, Manusmriti, Narad Smutra. Narada Smriti, Manusmriti, national motto. Satyamev Jayate, truth alone trumps, is taken from Mundaka Upanishad. So the national motto, which we have seen that Satyamev Jayate means truth alone trumps, is taken from where it is taken. It is taken from Upanishad, Mundaka Upanishad. Archaeological sources. Material remains such as iron implements and pottery from archaeological sites in Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan along the Indus and Ganges. Through archaeology sites like iron implements and pottery, what we have seen that we have many sources and material from which we have gathered, and till now we know from these sources we know that these were the Vedas, these were these we know from where we have got these places are Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan from these sources. Classes of Vedic age. Vedic age is divided into two phases. One is the early Vedic age, which is from 1500 to 1000 BC, and the later one is 1000 to 600 BC. Vedic culture, polity and society. The Rig Vedic polity was kingship based. Kula was the basic unit of the polity, and it was a head called Kulapati. They had a head called Kulapati, and the whole Kula is called a clan. The basic or one unit is called Kula, which was clan, and the head was called Kulapati, and joined together from a grama. A grama is a village. Grama was headed by Gramini. So the gram was headed by Gramini. A group of villages was called Viz or clan. Some of the groups of villages is called Viz or clan and was headed by Vishyapati. Rajan was the head of the Jan of the tribe, and the Rajan was the tribe's head, and he was addressed as Janosya Gopya, guardian of the people. There were several tribal kingdoms, so many tribes there were. So they were called Rashtras. Rigvedic period during Rigvedic period, Bharatas, Mathyas, and Puras were there. King. The main responsibility of Rajan was to protect his tribe. The king's main responsibility is to protect his tribe. His powers were limited by tribal assemblies, namely Vidhata, Sabha, Samiti, Gana. So what he has power was limited on the tribal assemblies. The tribal assemblies were Vidhata, Sabha, Samiti, Gana. Of these, Vidhata, the tribal assembly, was the oldest. So Vidhata, which is the tribal assembly, was the oldest. Sabha, a council of elders. Sabha was a council of elder, and Samiti, assembly of people. Here mentions. Look at this. Sabha is a council of elders. So over so many elders. Council of elders means here elder people were there. They called and members of the elder people is called Sabha. Samiti is normally assembly of people. A normal people it is, but Sabha we having a elder people. The king appointed a Purohit. Here Purohit is a chief priest who is a priest. Purohit is the person who prays, who I mean, who decorates the god, who chants, mantras, and all. And he do puja for the god. In economic, political, and military matter, the king was assisted by Senani. Senani is a person who assists the king regarding the military matters and the political and economic condition. Gramini was the leader of the village. The leader was the Gramini. Gramini was the leader of the village. When the Aryans moved eastward into the Ganges Yamuna Doab regions, the early settlements were replaced by territorial kingdoms. When the Aryans, when they were fully settled in the Sub-Sindhva, which was Punjab, then they after, in the late Vedic period, they moved to Yamuna Doab region. What happened? Uh, Settlements replaced by territorial kingdom. So what were the early settlements were, they make their, they when reaching in the Ganga Yamuna Doab region, they made themselves as territorial kingdom. Hereditary kingship began to emerge. So the king's son will be king, and his son will be king, his grandson will be the king. So it started the monarchical form of the government. The power of the king increased. So what happened? The power of the king increased, and he performed various ritual sacrifices to make his position, to make himself king, his sons king, to make his whole family king. He made so many sacrifices and holy pujas he did. Now, many janas or the tribes were amalgamated to form Janapadas or Rashtras in later Vedic period. What happened? The janas and tribes were forming into Janapads and Rashtras. The importance of Samati and Sabha diminished. So the Samati and the Sabha was lately slowly went off, and diminished means lately it gone, and the Vidhata completely disappeared. And what happened? The Vidhata was not there. New states emerged slowly, and new states were emerged. Bali was voluntary contribution of the people to the king. Bali is something what we produce, whatever we produced, we go and give to the king. Is that is Bali. In the later Vedic period, Bali was treated as a tax, and later on, which it became as a tax and collected regularly. So it became something that it was not a regular practice, but later on in the later Vedic period, the Bali became a tax. Kuru and Panchala kingdom flourished, and the large cities like Ayodhya, Indraprastha, and Mathura also emerged during this period. So the Kuru and Panchala kingdom became big, and the largest cities like Ayodhya, Indraprastha, and Mathura also emerged during Bali, a tax consisting of 1 by 6th of agriculture produce or cattle for a person. Bali is tax something one way. If you're producing your total agriculture produces something you have, you're going to give 1 by 6th of it to the king. Or you're having a cattle, you're going from that production, you're going to give 1 by 6. Before, in the beginning of the Vedic period, it was not a tax. It was, and later Vedic period become it became a tax. Social organization. The Vedic family was patriarchal. The fair complexed Aryans distinguished them from dark complexion non-Aryans, whom they used to call Dasyus or Dasas. So the Aryans were fair-looking persons, and whoever most of and the darker persons used to call non-Aryans, they were called Dasas. With the early Vedic society, there were three divisions. Three, the general public were called Vis. So the general public were called Vis. The warrior class is called Kshatriyas, and the priestly class was called Brahmana. It's clear that general public is called Vis, and the warrior class, whoever used to go for uh, Vas and all, they used to call Kshatriyas, and the priest person is called Brahmanas. At the later stage, when the Aryan had to accommodate non-Aryan skilled workers in their social arrangement, a rigid fourfold Varna system was developed. So what happened in non-Aryan, who were not skilled persons, uh, they were used in social arrangements, huh? So what happened, a fourfold version was started. One is priestly, one was the Brahmanas, other was Kshatriyas, and the land owing ones is called Vya, Vyasyas, and the skilled workers is called Sudras. Thus, a graded social order emerged. Although the Vedic age is evidenced by a good number of texts, it does not have adequate amount of material evidences. So we don't have any regarding it, but it is known that status of women in Rigvedic society, women relatively enjoyed some freedom. In Rigvedic society, women enjoyed more freedom. The wife was respected as a mistress of the household. She could perform rituals along with her husband in their house. So women used to perform pujas, and she had a good position. Um, and she used to perform pujas with her husband. Child marriage and sati were not at the time. Child marriage and sati pratha was not there. There was no bar on remarriage of widows, so widow remarriage was not there. Nevertheless, women were denying right to inherit property from their parents. So women had a right that she could get the property from their parents. They played no role in public affair, but they had no role in public affair means in any of the in public affairs means like she was not in warrior class, she was not in priestly class, she was only a homemaker. In the later Vedic period, the role of women in the society as well as the status even within the family declined. Later on, in the later Vedic period, women's value was socially declined. Women could no longer perform rituals in the family. The rules of marriage become more and more complex and rigid. Polygamy became common. So, what happened after that? Women could not longer, she couldn't perform the rituals in the family, and they were more complex and rigid during regarding the marriages, and widow remarriage was not encouraged. Widow remarriages was not encouraged in later very. Education was denied to women. Intercaste marriage was burned. Okay, education was also women used not to get in later Vedic period, and intercaste marriages was also was not bothered here. Economic life. Economy in Vedic period was sustained by a combination of pastoralism and agriculture. So most of them used to pastoralism is cattle feeding, uh, cattle rearing, and agriculture. And through occupation of Rigvedic Aryans was cattle rearing. There were carpenters, chariot makers, potters, smiths, weavers, leather workers. Other occupations of later Rigvedic Aryans were cattle rearing. Other than that, they used to have carpenters, chariot makers, potters. They used to make beautiful pottery, smith weavers, leather maker, and orchy colored pottery was attributed to this period. In the Vedic period, we have seen many of the potteries that orchy colored pottery. In that was attributed to this spirit. Horses, cows, goats, sheep, oxen, dogs were domesticated. So the horse, cow, goat, sheep, oxen, and dogs were domesticated. When Aryans permanently settled in Sindh and Punjab region, they began to practice agriculture. When they were in Sindh and Punjab region, they used to practice agriculture. The staple crop was barley. There is no mention of wheat or cotton in Rig Veda. So, in our Rig Veda text, we have seen that there is no mention of wheat and cotton, but they used to eat barley, and both were cultivated by Indus people. Two crops a year were raised. So, 6 months a crop. 6 months a crop. They used to cultivate barley, and they used to eat. It's a staple crop means they used to eat, and wheat and cotton were not there because it's mentioned in the Rig Veda. So see here, it's a what a beauty of the hut and the cartwheel, a man who is bluffing. Those were the Rigvedic days. See this picture, so nice. In the later Vedic period, the Aryans tamed elephant. So after in later Vedic period, the Aryan used to tame the elephant apart from cow, goat, sheep, and horse. So bad, no? They used to tame elephant, cow, goat, sheep, horse. In addition to craftsmen of early Vedic period, there were also jewelers, dyers, and smelters. In addition of other craft, the others were the jewelers, dyers, and the smelters. Potters of this period was painted graveware culture. So in the Vedic period, we have seen the ochre colored graveware culture. See here, we have ochre colored pottery they used, but in later Vedic period, they are using a painted graveware culture. Use of iron plough, they started using iron plough, acts helped to put more areas of land under cultivation. So they used iron plough. They started using axe. They used crops like they used wheat, rice, barley were cultivated. But in Vedic period they used only what they used. You remember here we have seen that they only used a barley, but in later Vedic period they started using rice, barley, rice, wheat, barley. They started cultivation with the growth of agriculture. The idea of private possession of land came into existence. New crafts and arts in this later Vedic period. What happened? New crafts and arts started. Trade become extensive. What happened here? Trade was so large. Trade started become very extensive. मतलब बहुत ही large. It started very repulsive. Barter system was prevalent. Barter system, exchange of goods here. Barter system is nothing that आप मैं आपको मेरे पास कॉटन है, आप मुझे कॉटन दो, आपके पास राइस है, आप मुझे राइस दो, या फिर मैं मेरे पास पॉटरी मेकर हूँ मैं, जैसे आप मुझे गड़ा देंगे, मैं आपको उसके बदले आपको चावल दूंगा. It like that they never used coins or money to uh, take exchange the things. They used to exchange like whatever I have I'll give, in exchange you give. This is barter system. They use Nishka Satamana gold coins. What they use? Nishka Satamana as a gold coins, and Krishnala silver coins for business transaction. Only for business transaction. Metal known to Rigveda Vedic people. Gold they call Hiranya, iron Shyama, copper and bronze is called Ayasa. Religion, Rigvedic Aryans worship mostly earthly and the celestial gods like Prithvi, earth. Prithvi they call earth, Agni, fire, Vayu, wind, Varuna, rain, Indra, thunder. There were also Rigvedic Aryan who mostly performed gods like earth, and they call Prithvi, they used to call earth they call Prithvi, Agni, Vayu, Varuna, thunder, Indra, they used to pray before them.